Uh, so I've kept it really informal, and the idea was to share a little bit of what all of us did in Kashmir, but also to just give everyone a little background to puppet theater that we use in community spaces. So I represent People. It's a company. It can be called a company or something. I don't know what. At the moment, we are a collective, and sometimes we are an ensemble. We are called Kat Katha, and it started in 1998. And ever since we started, a lot of our projects have always been focused on working with existing communities. And when I say communities, I mean it could be a village uh, uh, self-help group. It could be women's collectives in a city. It could be an urban slum. It could be a public school. So I mean community in the largest sense of its existence. And very often people invite us to work in their collectives because they have existing projects and they want us to add something to it. So somebody the other
Um,
day.
uh, Anurupa, could I just interrupt you for a moment? Because
Sure.
as you can see, Vikram has joined us,
Oh, that's
which is
fantastic.
fantastic. So just to welcome Vikram, because he is so central to the project
Yeah.
in Kashmir. Vikram, I don't know if you can hear us yet, or whether you're.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can't see you though.
Yeah, my video is not working, so I just
Okay.
I just joined without the video. I
It's
just
so
want to
Hey,
be clear.
fantastic to have you here, and to let
Hi.
people know that Vikram is the art therapist who's been working with Anurupa in Kashmir. So he has Anurupa and I are artists, and we might work with, in a therapeutic way, but we are not therapists. Whereas Vikram has a long history as an art therapist and has been amazing on this project. So I'm so glad you could join us, Vikram. You can see that a few other people have got connectivity problems. But nevertheless, if you can be here in voice and spirit, that's wonderful.
Yes,
and
yes, I love
when
to
I
be here. Yeah,
jump
thank you.
to the Art of Healing project, Vikram, feel free to jump in anytime. I'm going to
Sure.
share a series of photos and things with everybody. I was just giving everyone a little background to what we do and what the Community Arts Project has meant. And someone recently called us grid workers, and I realized, ooh, that's what we are. We sort of link up a lot of different communities who want to work with the arts as a form of storytelling. I have a small presentation. I'm just going to share that. It's essentially just a series of images, which will, the first one is from our project in Pulwama in Kashmir. You can see Vikram there. He's in this image. This is the group of children that we were working with. This is the giant butterfly that the project eventually started it became a motif for the project from the beginning to the end. It was called the Kalakar. Kasba is like a community, a collective, and Kalakar is artist. And we had chosen the butterfly as a symbol because through the project, we use the metaphor of transformation, from the egg to the butterfly quite a bit. And I'm going to take you to some of our other projects. These are much older projects. This is a project on reclaiming public spaces. About 10 or 15 years ago, New Delhi started to become more and more gated, more and more divided, and spaces for public use began to shrink. And a theater space that had come that had opened about 10 years ago, a theater space which has a huge political history. It is called Studio Saftar, and the man Saftar Hashmi, he was a theater activist who was stabbed while he was performing in 1986, Vikram, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
96, yes.
So while he was performing on stage, he was performing a play called Halla Bol, which was against the establishment, and it was a pro-labor, progressive labor law play, and he was stabbed, and the group continued to perform, and they went back the next day and performed in the same space. Now they have a theater space. It's a bookshop, a cafe, and a theater. They wanted to popularize the space and also reclaim the park in front of their theater. So we did something called gully cricket. We played cricket with these giant masks. And cricket, as you know, is very popular in India. Children play it out in the streets, on the and it's something we inherited from our British legacy, and it's extremely popular, and there's still both professionally as well as something children do. And we realized that the big problem was that the police does not give you permission to perform in the streets anymore. So you have to get the special police permission, which is very hard to get. But every time we would say we are playing cricket, we wouldn't have to get permission. So that was the one reason. And wearing these giant heads immediately turned it into theater. The interesting thing about this match is that it was played exactly like the sport is played, but without a ball. There was an invisible ball. And the audience, and you can see quite a few of them at the back. In this particular show, we had about 800 people watching this match. And they were all wondering in the first 15, 20 minutes about what's going on. Why is there no ball? And then suddenly, at some point, people from the audience started to argue with the umpire, saying, "You didn't declare a no ball." That was a leg before wicket and things like that. And if you see the boy in the blue T-shirt, it is a member of the public. He's a member of the public, and one of our actors always retires hurt, and we invite people from the public to take over the batting role, and then the bowling, and then the fielding. And he's a batsman, and he is playing with an invisible ball, and it goes on. And we had this big discussion about, what are why do people engage in community activities where it's not real? So there was a whole discussion about suspension of disbelief, but also a discussion about space and what invisible lines in space are. What are these invisible walls now in place, and why people can enter certain spaces and cannot? So this was a very exciting project. We played this in 9 locations across the city and got arrested once. So that was fun. This is a similar project, but this time we were in a village in Eastern India, in Jharkhand, extremely poor state in India, economically backward, mostly agricultural. And the young women that you see in the yellow kurtas, these are 4 young women, one of whom was being married off when she was 12 years old. She had resisted child marriage and became de facto a real hero among her peer group, and started a women's self-help group, which would stop child marriages across their own village and neighboring villages by turning up in large numbers. They would gate crash weddings, 200 girls, and stare at everybody. And very often they would just shame people into stopping, this wedding. And this young woman who's sitting behind one of my co-actors on a bicycle, she's the one who started it off, also gave the most fiery speeches and wrote the most beautiful poetry. So we got on to the back of this truck and traveled to about 35 villages and performed with these giant puppet heads, a part of their story and partly a generic script about counting women in. So it was called Mujhe Bhi Gino, which is Count Me In. It was a very exciting project. It was really intense. And we went to another 20 villages in another state in India, also with local women in that region. This is in Buxton. This was very interesting. In Buxton, there used to be a puppet theatre company run by...
Are we talking about Buxton, UK?
Yes, Midlands, UK, absolutely. And I thought this could be interesting to share with you. This happened 15 years ago. Chris Agnew was the director of the company, and she used to do the Buxton Puppet Festival. But what was absolutely incredible about their puppet theatre company is they were working in schools across the Midlands and looking particularly at bullying in schools. And they were looking at, there was in that year a horrifying case of a differently abled boy bullied and then thrown onto the railway tracks, and he had died. And they had started working in schools with grandparents and children, and bringing the community together and talking about bullying. And this was a project where we spoke about bullying, and images were created around bullying. So here's someone who said, I feel like a worm. And so we had this giant puppet worm, and we did this Sunday morning parade across the city with all the builders of the puppets, who was young school children, teenagers mostly, and their grandparents. And mostly talking about violence in school and bullying in school. And this is the water project that Lorraine had mentioned. This is in Jhunjhunu district, west of Rajasthan, is a severely arid area. What is very interesting is there have always been traditional systems of conserving water. In the last 15 years, since they've started receiving tap water from a dammed river source, people have stopped conserving water. So the community has almost forgotten this knowledge of conserving water and the value of water. These children that you see, they went back to their grandmothers, especially, and great aunts and great, so the generation which was above the generation of their parents, to ask them about stories of water and carrying water on their heads. So women would be carrying like 10 pots on their heads. They would walk 20 kilometers for this water, and they would really treated water like gold. So we did a collection of stories. It was a project called Water Detectives. All the children gathered poems, stories, songs, brought it back, went for a visit to the local step well. And what you see here is recreations of the step well using cardboard boxes from the trash, and talking about water and setting up this water museum for the entire school. So we had worked with about 40 children, and the school had about 400 children. So they all got to see the exhibition, and also the entire village. Their parents, aunts, and uncles came back, and there was a lot of conversation around the imagery and the traditional narratives around water conservation. This is a project where 3 years ago, just before the lockdown, 2019, the government of India passed an extremely draconian law which was targeted at minorities in India, especially the Muslim community. And soon after that, there was a very violent attack of one of the universities in New Delhi. In fact, two violent attacks. And one was a liberal arts college, and one was a much larger university, a Muslim majority university. And students were beaten brutally, arrested for no reason, practically no reason. And their grandmothers and mothers sat down for this one of its kind, I mean, the first ever in India protest, which began with 10 women and became a protest of at least a million women. And this was a sculpture that we did, and it was called an ode to the women of the protest. And we made one with some college students, and then it sort of, people started picking up this idea, and they started to pop up in different parks where the protest was happening. And what was interesting is because it was puppets, they didn't know who to arrest. They didn't know who to punish. So it was really interesting. And it was just cardboard. So this is a little sense of our studio space. We are in this village in a sort of semi-urban, semi-rural setup just outside New Delhi. Inside, we have a lot of open space, and we run a community art space for children, which runs every Sunday for the children of the village. And what they could do is reclaim the street we're on, and they've painted it up. We have a huge problem of drug peddling and addiction among teenagers. In fact, the door you see on your left, just outside the studio, on the red wall, is where the drug dealer used to sit. And we would often have a lot of teenagers passing by, picking stuff up, smoking up right there. It was mostly hashish. And And once the art project began and children started to paint, he disappeared. And suddenly everything, the dynamic in the street sort of changed. People would turn up and start taking selfies near our wall, and the children would be telling everyone that they had painted these. A lot of things get vandalized in our neighborhood, but this wall has never been touched. There's never been any vandalism because it's possibly because it's from the children of the community. This is the children. This is our Sunday club. They also have a library. They can read storybooks. Some of them are school dropouts. They don't go to school. So basically, the only reading options they have is in this library. Some of them do go to school, but still can't read. So there's a lot of, and this is when they were really young. Now they're quite grown up. It's already 6 years of running the space. So they do a lot of art projects, etc. This is something we did during the lockdown. We had this massive labor crisis in India. It's not a labor crisis, but the lockdown was announced overnight. And because of the lockdown, literally thousands of people walked home from the cities. They couldn't afford to live in the cities when it was locked. And this mass exodus of people was, I mean, possibly one of the biggest human, I don't even know what to call it. What should I call it, Vikram? It was, of course,
yeah, you can call it, you can actually call it mass migration back home, return home migration back,
but
and
full of
also
hardships.
and also create enforced displacement.
Yeah, enforced displacement would be the word for it. And like it was terrible because people were walking without food or water because everything was shut down, and literally thousands of them with their children. And this was actually happening on all the main roads in New Delhi, and I live on one of those main roads. And for 6 days, I watched a thousand people, a few thousand people walk every day. And this is a little film that came out of it to talk about it. And for the longest time, there was no conversation about this. It was there in the press. Of course, it was in all media channels, but then poof, it disappeared. And this has been one of the ways of keeping the conversation going. So coming back to the art of healing, this is one of the projects that you'll see. I'm going to start talking about it. And of course, Vikram, feel free to jump in. Vikram has been working in this particular school, among other places in Kashmir for almost 8 years, 9 years, Vikram?
Yeah, and 9 years, yes.
9 years. And last year, when we had the possibility of doing this project, it felt like this was a very obvious choice, the school in Pulwama. Just to give you a background of Pulwama, in India, Kashmir had a special status. The special status was removed 3 years ago. And
2019, August.
So what happened as a result is
Anurupa, I wonder if everyone here knows where Kashmir is and etc. Just, I mean, most of us have heard of Kashmir, but I just wonder if you could just describe a little bit about.
So just to give you a sense of Kashmir, it's the northernmost state of India. When India became independent in 1947, Kashmir was given a special status. Kashmir had was a princely state, and it was brought into the political state of India. And this coming in was quite conditional, which meant that it had a special status, and which had several laws, like it was Kashmiri, to protect Kashmiris so that non-Kashmiris could not buy land in this area or hold bank accounts. And this special status remained for a while until it became a politically very strategic space between India, Pakistan, and China, and wars were fought just to the north of it. And it became a major area of contention over the line of control, which is the northernmost border of India. So eventually it led to a state where Kashmir became a military state with a military occupation. The Indian army occupied it, and followed by a lot of atrocities, followed by the emergence of a resistance movement, which was violent, many underground groups within Kashmir, and very complex, very murky political situation, which with the international community got murkier, and there were many vested interests within India politically, within the immediate neighborhood. And what eventually happened is that people in Kashmir were always stuck in the crossfires of these situations. And to make matters worse, the current government removed the special status, and they did it in a way where it was absolutely brutal. They shut the state down without electricity, without internet connection, without connectivity at all, and with more military presence, more of a sort of very strong political clamping down on all many human rights and freedom of speech. And in this situation, added to this was COVID, and it led to a further lockdown. So children in Kashmir had not been to school for almost 3 years. And things started to open up last year. So this project came at a very crucial moment in Kashmir for children. And Pulwama was the state where we worked. Pulwama is also where about 2 years ago, Vikram, was it 3 years ago, there was a bomb blast which killed
2019 January. Yeah, the same year.
Which killed 40 soldiers and created a further chasm and a divide between the rest of India and Kashmir, and really villainized Kashmiris. And
the present government won its election based on
because of this incident. So that's the political background, and so Pulwama still continues to be a very it's a controversial word around here. It's if you say Pulwama to someone, they'll say, "Oh, what? Where have you been to Pulwama? Really?" So I just want to share some images at this point, and it'll be easier and faster if we keep looking at what Pulwama looks like, what the school looks like. So they're slightly random. So you'll see a whole. I will keep speaking as I show you the images. This is a view from the window of the school. It's magical. Any window you look out of, you just see mountains on all sides, and you see the skies. This is the children beginning one of the projects, one of the wall murals, which had also little peep show boxes. So all these shows are based on stories, and the stories were developed through a series of systems. One was that we began with a 6-frame storyboard based on the Muli Lahad technique, where they did the hero's journey.
Yeah, it's based on the hero's journey.
So each child did one, and then in little groups they merged their stories. They did a little shadow puppet show with Vikram in November 2020, and then they started to evolve the story more, and the stories became different art projects. So this was one project called The Story of the Lonely Man, which was
Anurupa, do these pictures open up? I mean, is it possible to just and then can you just sort of scroll through them as you're talking? I mean, I don't know how to do it on a PC.
Do you see them when I change them?
If you double click on it, does it not open as a
I see. So you can't see them. That's terrible. Wait, I'm going to try this again. So what you can see is like a contact sheet, right?
Yes.
Let's see.
Double click there.
No, double click is only going to.
What about the open? What about the open option at the top? Does that work?
Yeah, let me try that. That might work. Nope.
That one.
Yeah. Do you see these?
I can see the page with lots of images on it.
But you can't see the change, huh?
No.
Yeah. So that's, whoops, that's the thing with, let me, okay.
Oh, there.
Yeah. So this is the children beginning to paint The wall, can you see the change?
Yeah.
Wait a sec. Why isn't it changing? Ah, there. Can you see the change?
Yeah.
Fabulous. So these are some more. Oops. So this is and if you see the boxes on the table, these became the miniature theaters that they were building. These are different scenes from the story. They're dioramas. These are some more views of Pulwama, what Pulwama city looks like.
Town.
Pulwama town. This is near the school. This is outside the school. This is the school building. This is the garden. This is the view from the art room.
And Lorraine, those white bits, Anurupa, go back. The white range, Lorraine, as you can see that where she's pointing finger, that's the mountain range.
Oh, wow.
That's how high it is. The mountain range is very different from the other mountain ranges in India because it looks like the Hindu Kush mountains in Afghanistan. It's that huge. It's called the Pir Panjal.
It looks just like a cloud bank.
Yes,
you couldn't even tell it was mountains.
Yeah, that's right. I just wanted to show it to you. It's completely...
Most days you can see the snow-capped mountain. It's quite beautiful. This is one of the projects which the children were working on, and you can literally see step by step. Vikram, you want to tell them the story of this little hill?
Yeah, so this particular hill is very interesting. This is actually a crematorium ground for the Hindus, the Pandits, the upper caste, non-Muslims who lived here way before they were forcibly removed or they had to leave. So this was a crematorium ground, and next to it is the graveyard. And the top of the hill on the left-hand corner is where there was a temple, which and that temple was also broken down by the angry mob, because there was a mosque which was called the big famous mosque in Ayodhya in northern India, which was also demolished. And as a reaction, they broke down this temple, which is actually quite unlikely because many of the other Hindu temples are actually quite there. But this particular one has been removed, and so the mound is still there. And these two trees are my favorite trees, and they keep changing colors, and autumn, summer, they're all the 4 seasons.
They are a cousin of the maple trees.
Yeah,
you see massive. The red leaves exactly like the maple trees.
Yeah.
So this is a continuation of the you can see the progress in the wall mural. These are little story dioramas which started to emerge. The story called The Lonely Boy. And this is the messy room where we were all working together. And a lot of this building project had begun. This is some of the streets of Srinagar, isn't it, Vikram? This is the day we went to...
Yes, this is Srinagar. There's Old Town there,
yeah.
Downtown, the downtown area, which is also quite tumultuous many a times.
Yeah.
That's one of our colleagues.
That's one of our colleagues, Shamim. This is what nights look like, super dark. This is another one of the project. This is Afifa, who was also on the project, one of the teachers in the school, also one of the researchers on the project. This is the mural of another story. This was an all-girls group. And the girl I was mentioning is from this group, Lorraine, who wants to start an art gallery in Pulwama. And this was a wall mural which was about a girl who's disinherited. She's a princess who's disinherited and can't be queen because she's a woman, and how she fights back. There's a witch and everything else in the mix. So it's part 2. This is the wall mural coming together, really literally.
I think something I found very interesting about it is that these are not just stories, are they? Because you took the children through a whole process of non-verbal sort of visualization of how they felt. So you were exploring the feelings through the stories.
Yeah, and they were all fantasy stories, like literally fantasies and with mythical creatures and magical creatures and witches and goblins and all sorts of things. But in the end, we had this conversation, and Vikram was leading this conversation where it was about what does it mean for you, and it was interesting that that this lonely boy story for them meant they talked about the loneliness of children. And you see a resonance of this not just in Kashmir but across even the rest of the country right now, with the lockdown and what has happened to children and how they've been forced to not leave their homes. The other story, which was about the girls, the princess, is about girls talking about not inheriting from the family, not being given, not being considered equal to boys when it comes to inheriting, whether it's property or even having an equal status in the family. So all of these stories really resonated with circumstances in Kashmir.
Yeah. Can I just jump in here? I mean, I just wanted to say, the children on their own extrapolated or connected their narratives or the fantasy story with their lives. It was facilitated, however, but I think they easily understood the connection. And what was really nice is that they articulated the connection quite in a very lucid manner. And what was particularly nice was that the grand narrative of the conflict wasn't so much talked about, but other narratives, and they were quite compelling in their nature. So the gender inequity, the loneliness, and other dimensions, because mostly when one goes to from this particular part of the country, there often the conflict is often talked about. But I think it was really interesting and nice at how they could actually look at many dimensions of life and actually talk to their parents about it, and this was a forum for them to articulate in a very safe way to the parents, because there is a lot of social control from the parents. This became a very interesting public space to actually talk about gender inequity, loneliness, and other difficult subjects which the children obviously would not be able to talk on around about dinner time. So I think this was really heartening.
Also, I think the school community, other children, the peer group, like for instance here, it was very interesting when they presented shows to the peer group, the kind of conversations that emerged about this resonance with loneliness, for instance. Also, there was one theme about the Prince of Egypt, this whole imagined story of a prince who was betrayed. So this narrative of betrayal, this narrative of a young boy losing his father, being orphaned. There was a lot of resonance with what was happening and what was felt, but like Vikram said, not in the with only the political narrative of the conflict, but the narrative of the individual and what happens in a family structure, for instance. This butterfly, which
could I just point out Nikki's comment in the chat, where she's just reinforced what you were talking about, the importance of stories and narrative in a therapeutic sense.
Right.
I like that thing. People who deny the existence of dragons are often eaten by dragons from within.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and in that context, this butterfly is really exciting because we did this whole butterflies journey, and Vikram does art-based exercise, which is a long drawn exercise, which is different land of colors. And there is diagnostic work in that, and also therapy and transformational work in that. And this time we added a butterfly in that. So right from the beginning, while talking to children and discovering where they come from and discovering their homes, it was always through the eyes of the butterfly and the journey of the butterfly. And then we had them we did this land of the egg. And then in the meantime, Vikram was also taking the butterfly through a particular land of color. Then we did the butterfly as a caterpillar, and we built a cocoon which was the children putting in their favorite foods and their favorite and things that gave them strength, and building a physical little cocoon, which was like a room, and where the caterpillar could also keep its secrets. And we sealed the box, and the butterfly was born. So we actually physically did some of these things, almost living the metaphor. And very excitingly, on the last day, the last few days when the project was about to end, it felt like we hadn't done enough justice to the butterfly. And we met this fantastic carpenter, and I asked him, do you think you could make us a butterfly cutout? And voila, we had a cutout the next day. And the children painted it up. And what happened, and this really was pretty last minute, it wasn't in the original idea, is we decided to, I'm going to jump a few images. Go to the, yeah, so that's the final butterfly and the entire group sitting around it. And then they sort of breathed life into it, and it was hoisted up and hung from the ceiling of the school. And when you enter the school, it's like almost this giant arterium with this huge 30 feet, 10 meter, almost 15-meter ceiling. And the butterfly hangs there even today, as a reminder for the children. And
also it's about the traces we leave behind. You know, it's also a metaphor of the traces we leave behind as of course we parachute in and we parachute out, but also projects come and projects are dismantled, but the traces you leave behind in a building and as a witness to what has happened, and I think this sort of made lots of children wanting to join the Kasbah, because a lot of kids, when they see this, are intrigued by what has happened in the school, because many of them were not part of it, primarily because of COVID and because of, you know, the various other reasons why the school has been shut out for 2 years, 3 years. But when they come and they see this has happened and they see this butterfly, they have spoken to the principal and they said, we want to be part of the Kasbah. What can we do to become a part of it? So I think this is a kind of a takeaway metaphor, you know, a metaphor that we leave behind, literally lived in and embodied by the school itself. So this was actually quite fantastic. That and of course the children who've gone through the experience also see it as a reminder of what has happened, and they're also longing to continue to be artist workers, longing to continue to do this work. It's sort of reinvigorating.
So actually, what has happened post that is there was a dissemination idea to bring the children to New Delhi and collaborate with a school in New Delhi and have a physical exhibition. And then, of course, we had the second wave. But we did not give up and instead did a digital exhibition. And it felt like it would be a pity to just have the children share with another group of children and stop. So post the sharing, we decided to do a short workshop where the two groups of children, so there were 20 from this public school in New Delhi, 20 from Dolphin School, who got to know each other through little art exercises. They did workshops for each other. They attended each other's workshops. Shamim and I did a short workshop with them. And then they worked with two artists over a period of a month, one comic book artist and a creative writing, a creative writer who writes children's storybooks. And they worked in a buddy system. So it was one young person from Dolphin and one from Shiv Nadar School in New Delhi, creating projects together. And it was quite fantastic because there are such notions on both sides about what the other is like. So children in Pulwama have a certain idea of what the rest of India is about. And the children in New Delhi have a certain idea of what Pulwama is about. And it was wonderful, without saying that, no, it's not how you think it is. It's just the exchange which started to make both spaces human for each other. And at the moment in mass media, in the mainstream media of India, and it has been like this for a very long time. Currently, of course, Kashmir is completely villainized, and it's seen as full of terrorists. And in the past, it was seen as an unsafe place, only a space of conflict. And it's only the children's interaction which breaks this. And also among children in Kashmir, there is a resentment against what they call India, as opposed to Kashmir. And this was a moment where they stopped addressing each other as Kashmiris and Indians. And that was very, very, very exciting. And some friendships also began, and very beautiful art projects started to unfold. And that's where we are currently. And I'm going to stop here so that maybe we can have a conversation.
I think that point is particularly interesting in terms of the way the arts made a safe space. I noticed that in an earlier project I did, the Volco, it was called. It was a planet in cyberspace, but I linked up children in different parts of the world, different parts of the country, sometimes different countries, but who knew nothing about the way the others lived and actually would have all sorts of prejudice about it. But basically, they connected through fantasy characters and stories that they made up, and then when they met each other, they met each other virtually like this, although it was very early technology. And they had lots to say to each other, because if you'd have just put them together, there were a group of children, for example, from East London and a group of children from Shetland on an island in the north, off the north of Scotland, who knew nothing. East London was seen as a sort of a dangerous place, but the kids were like each other. They had so much in common. And I think what I've learned through work I've done in conflict resolution is that what you need to create for conflict resolution is safe spaces in which people can interact. And I think the arts are incredibly good at that.
Yeah. And I think also the arts offer a narrative which is subliminal, which is not the mainstream, which is not the narrative which occupies and people, because people are constantly bombarded by these narratives. It doesn't occupy. You can do nothing about, for example, the political narrative of India today. There's nothing you can do because the mainstream is constantly screaming it out at you, and constantly trying to prove that this is the only truth. What the arts do is they create enough doubt in people's minds to start maybe not believing or start questioning what they have heard and seen and what is presented as the gospel truth. And I think it shifts focus, which is what is fantastic, to a space where no precedence has been set. So prejudices can't yet be formed. And I think that's really highlighted, particularly in this project. It was really fantastic that we were working often with things that were mostly non-serious, mostly on fantastical or a little bit ridiculous or a little bit funny, and that constantly broke down.
Yes. Well, that's the fantastic thing about working with children, is that they bring that sort of joy and craziness into everything. And I think when you start relating through fantasy, you find that people's imaginations aren't that different. People can relate through imagination.
Yes.
Whereas when they're not being informed by, as you say, by all that stuff that's coming at them, telling them what they ought to think.
Yeah. I mean, having said that, of course, this is also a project which is clearly has documented evidence that the arts also manage to alter, if used in a particular way, manage to alter behavior, reduce PTSD, change the physical trauma within the body, or change a whole lot of things about the way children relate to community, each other, to themselves. We've seen that. Yeah,
creating new neural pathways.
Yeah.
And one thing that's fantastic about this Art of Healing project is that there have been researchers, child health specialists who actually are evaluating and researching the outcomes of the project. So it's very rare on an arts project that anyone from another discipline in that way looks into it that seriously. And really starts to work out what has gone on and to see what parts are transferable. And, you know, usually you do an arts project, you know, it's had some good effect. You don't have any money to do anything else with it. And then you do your best to take your knowledge onto the next project, but it isn't often there's an opportunity to really look into what's happened. Actually, it would be really good to bring Nikki in here if you're there, Nikki, because your view as somebody who's not from an arts background but recognises the role of the arts, it'd be good to hear your perspective a bit on how you see the arts.
I think it's such an impressive projects that people have been talking about, and I think there's something, you can't be well as a person if you're not recognised as a human, and I think that's one of the things that these projects are doing. They're giving space for people to just find their voices, and not everyone's confident speaking, but they might be more confident showing or talking through metaphor or showing symbolism. And it's like a shortcut between people. You can cut out all the things that sort of divide us away from each other, because we all know what it's like to, you say, miss your mum or feel neglected or overlooked. And it's like a shortcut between human hearts. And I think that's so important. And also there's something very healing and about being recognized and people stopping to take a look at your story and to understand it. Because in conversations, even when we're supposed to be listening to each other, you know, we can talk past each other. There's a lot of, you know, nodding and smiling, and it's not the same thing as actually sort of honoring somebody's presence by absolutely recognizing their worth, their experience, their story. And so I think it's really hopeful and positive, and I found it very moving. I'm really pleased. Took some time out of marking to come.
It was lovely to have you here, Nikki. And I say it was a shame that Michael didn't involve you more directly in the project. But I just think that we probably, you know, that there is a lot of thinking and of development that's gone on here. I'm sure there are connections still to be made. And
absolutely. Well, we have art appreciation in the nursing courses.
Do you?
So one of the tasks that the first year nurses do is they find a piece of artwork, and that could be anything from, it could be a cultural fabric, it could be a sculpture, it could be an artwork of any kind, and then they talk about it in terms of health and well-being. And so we've had some really extraordinary stories. So one that really resonates with people is Chris Ophelia picture of Doreen Lawrence. And that's, I mean, it's such an extraordinary thing. And that really does set off a lot of conversations. There was a student who very boldly picked a Van Eyck this year to talk about the importance of breastfeeding and actually recognizing the kind of beauty of it and the importance of it, which was, really exciting to see. And also, I think students picking things that are culturally relevant to them is important. But also one of the things that was very interesting is the picture of Migrant Mother. It's a photograph from like 1930s Dust Bowl. And someone was saying it's really refreshing to see a picture of somebody who's like homeless, disenfranchised, and a refugee who's white, because I've forgotten that they could be. Yeah, it's all about perspective, isn't it? It's all about remembering that we as human beings go through things, and that it's about recognizing that and having empathy for each other. So I think absolutely we're learning all the time from you guys. So don't think we're not watching you. We are.
Although we didn't manage to connect several years ago when you approached me about placements, but you know, we have students here who are interested in going on to do art therapy. And I imagine that if they're developing a project, perhaps you would be a good person to get.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Always a pleasure. And that goes for anybody on the call. If I can ever do anything, you've got my email, or can get hold of it. Anything I can do, I'm always happy to do. It's never a problem.
That's wonderful. Would you mind putting your email in the chat?
Mind. I'm just about to chat now.
If there's anyone there who'd like to just copy it, you can get it off the system if you're in Middlesex, but just to make it easier.
Yeah, I was just checking. It never gives people much sense of security if you spell your own name wrong, does it?
You didn't spell it wrong though, did you?
I didn't. I checked it.
Yeah, and I know. I'm always doing that myself. Actually. We have a minute or so left. Has anyone got any comments that they would like to make, or how did you, those students who we've got with us, how have you got any response or things you'd like to say? If you're still with us, because I can't see anybody, but I assume you're still there. No.
In my case, I really love the idea to have you have made like collaborative art for all the topics to be presenting about, and I think that's actually what's great in social practice. I think that you can always try new things and explore new ideas with the society. It's not just you as artists in general, it's just like something more global. And yeah, I love that. And really, I love that. I love the one, I think, about child marriage, or the one, I think someone come and take the child from there was great. Really, this kind of works, I think, is really very important to explore more them, because really between art you can get how it's more easy to see the topic and the issue, because it's not like the typical talking, but people just look at that, they're like, what is this? So you have opportunity to explain. So yeah, I love that idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martina.
So I noticed it's gone 5 o'clock now, so we should at this point just thank Anurupa very much, and Vikram as well, for coming along and sharing some of his insight into the project. And so it's been a delight. I'm sure this won't be the last time. I'm sure we will do things together again. But
yes,
I've really appreciated your input, and thank you for coming today, Nikki. That was really great to get your perspective on this. So thank you, everybody, for coming. Remember, for students, that next session it's crits, but next session, Abigail, I'll send you a link, another link, and we'll do a tutorial in the morning. I'll set up at 11 o'clock in the morning. Would that be okay with you? I can't hear you, but I'll write to you, and then the rest of you I will see at 3 o'clock next week, but I will write and send a reminder. So I've got anything else to remind you about? Okay, so thank you so much, and
thank you, Doreen.
We'll see you next week, and Anurupa, will let you go because it's very late in the evening there. Must be about 9:30 or more. So
see you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Enjoy the rest of the evening, and Vikram too.
Bye. See you. Thank you, Doreen. Take care. See you.
Bye.
Thank you.